Alright, what's up everybody? So today I am joined by Clyde the Weeaboo and Shintai Reviews, and we're going to be discussing some Berserk. In particular, we're going to be talking about the complex relationship between Guts and Griffith, what it means, what have they been through, and just everything surrounding that relationship, because I think we can all agree here that this is one of the most complex relationships in all of anime and manga. Am I right, boys? Am I right, boys?
Damn straight. This is a very iconic relationship when it comes to anime, and a lot of mysterious things going on between Mr. Griffith and Guts. But Shintai, what do you think?
I completely agree. I think their relationship is something to be analyzed because there's so much that can be inferred. There's different ways to look at it, different interpretations, and I definitely agree that this is one of those relationships in anime that stands out as being something really special.
Alright, so I guess let's start off talking about the past and how they first met up. If anybody, forgets or doesn't remember in particular, Guts and Griffith, they crossed paths because Guts, I believe he was, a wandering swordsman, and some stuff went down with some members of the Band of the Hawk, Griffith's group at the time, and one thing led to another where Griffith and him crossed swords, and he says, "You're mine," and pretty much after he defeated him, he was rolling with the Band of the Hawk for a while. Now, where everything went wrong is one of the big questions I guess we need to tackle first. Where things started to go downhill, was it the moment where Guts left that was the true decline, and how everything transpired to where ultimately these characters are at right now, or was it something before that? Shintai, you want to go first?
I think it was that moment, personally, and I think that it's because Griffith had a very definite interpretation of the relationship between him and Guts, and that moment challenged that perception. And I think that had Guts stayed, then things would have been very different. Because right after that is when Griffith started acting irrationally. The only time Griffith ever acted irrationally before that event was whenever it had something to do with Guts. He would go out of his way to save Guts. He would do things for Guts that he normally wouldn't do for other people. And it just seems to me that whenever something is related to Guts, Griffith doesn't act normally. He does something he wouldn't normally do.
Interesting. What's your take on this, Clyde?
Yeah, when the relationship sort of went downhill was, I guess, like, Griffith sort of seen Guts as property, which was his biggest mistake, because Guts is basically a lone soldier in a sense, and he's always been that way. Like, there was always going to be a stage where, Guts would want to leave and do his own thing, and Griffith is a control freak where he acted like a child. Like, as soon as Guts wanted to leave the Band of the Hawk, he threw a hissy fit, slept with a princess, and fucked everything up, because a lot of people are like, oh well, if Guts didn't leave, well, Guts has no obligation to stay with the Band of the Hawk. Like, he's not under some contract where Griffith owns his soul. Griffith chucked a hissy fit, slept with a princess, fucked everything up, and that's how it all went downhill there. That's how I see it, because like I just said, Guts doesn't owe Griffith anything really.
Well, technically speaking, they had agreed based on their duel that Guts would join the Band of the Hawk.
That is true, but he did serve the Band of the Hawk more than their duel was worth, let's be honest.
Personally, I think the relationship changed in its entirety, and this was a bit of development on Guts' side, the moment he heard that speech of what Griffith thinks of a friend as. The moment he heard Griffith say what he truly values is a friend, and he didn't fit in that category, I think Guts felt like, I need to be my own man. I can't live in this man's shadow anymore. And I think that's where everything slowly started to fall apart. Guts wanted to go out on his own. He wanted to prove himself. And I think partially something to do with that was essentially he was taking those words to heart and saying, I am going to be his friend. I'm not going to just be a weapon at his disposal. I'm actually going to do something, and maybe one day he'll look at me as a friend. I think that's where slowly the dynamics of their relationship started to drift and get a little topsy-turvy. Now, here's a question I want to ask you guys. Do you think in retrospect, from that moment, that Griffith, if he could go back in time, not only just because of how things transpired and changed and, everything that happened afterward, But also, do you think he learned something from that in a sense, in that he would have actually, when he was saying that speech, instead of saying, you know, that essentially Guts isn't his friend, none of them are his friends, he would have actually included them? Or you think he's so far gone now with everything that's happened since then that he still looks at it as, you know, in a childish manner, or in, you know, basically his own selfish ideals?
I think Griffith had sort of made up his mind and made it clear what his whole goals were from the start. I think it's very hard for people to comprehend what he was saying exactly, because if you take it at face value, it's like, oh yeah, you know, here's a guy that just has goals and stuff. He's very passionate about it. Obviously, Guts was paying very strict attention to what he was saying. That's basically why he left, and just exactly what you said. You know, he changed his mind. He's like, I don't want to be like living in this guy's shadow. I'm not a weapon. And once we seen what happened in the eclipse, we realized that Griffith truly, when it comes down to the core of his being, he only seen the Band of the Hawk as something to reach his own goal. They were just a toy to use to get to where he wanted. So, I mean, that's really my take on it. I think Griffith was set in his ways. I don't know if he would change things, because he had the opportunity to sort of be good during the eclipse, and even when he had Casca and Guts helping him out while he was a cripple, he still decided in his head to be a cunt, regardless of how mentally fucked he was from the torture.
What about you, Shintai? What is your thoughts?
I think before he became Femto, he probably would have worded that differently, but after, he's pretty much too far gone. And I also want to make kind of like an addendum, not an addendum, but like I want to add a little bit to what you were saying before about like with when Guts heard that speech. I think it would be fair to say is that was when the relationship changed for Guts, but Griffith didn't know that Guts was there. So
yeah, that's Griffith's
true. In Griffith's eyes, the relationships remain the same. So I'm going to say that that's when it changed for Guts, but the duel's when the relationship changed for Griffith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point too, because like it is true that Griffith didn't know that Guts was there. So from his perspective, Griffith would probably be like thinking to himself, "What the fuck's going on? Why is he leaving? Like, what the fuck?"
During that duel that they have, that's one of the very few moments in the entirety of Berserk where we actually get to see inside of Griffith's mind. Most of the time we get to hear Guts' inner monologues, but not so much Griffith, and I think that's important, because the few times that we do, what we see in Griffith's head is not a pretty picture.
One big thing that the fandom doesn't really like to talk about, but I think we need to address it because we're talking about their relationship. Something that I feel as though, and I think there's quite a few people can take from this as well, I think there's, in a way, a love within this relationship. I think, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if, I'm not sure both parties, but I could say, at the very least from Griffith's side, there is a possibility there that he was in love with Guts. I'm kind of curious on you guys' perspective on that. Do you think there's a possibility that Griffith was in love with Guts, or do you think they both were in love with each other? Personally, just to throw my opinion out there, I don't think that Guts saw him in that way. I think he saw him as an incredible friend. I think he saw him as somebody that kind of saved him from being by himself in a way. And then ultimately, after the eclipse and everything that transpired, he looks at him as like, you need to die, motherfucker. But I think even afterward, to a certain degree, Griffith is almost as if he's a scorned lover. And he looked at Guts, and you know what you were saying earlier about how he would go out of his way for Guts and how he would do things irrationally, and that was the biggest moment where he was really irrational, and what made everything go downhill for the Band of the Hawk was the fact that Guts left him. Do you think that he truly was in love with this man?
I think there's a couple of ways you could look at it. One is that Griffith is a very big control freak, and he wants what he wants. You know, at the end of the day, he threw a hissy fit, like we said before. I don't think there's any romantic reciprocation from Guts' part because of two reasons. One, he showed 2 times in the series, or maybe 3 times, that he's attracted to women 100%. You know, like with, you know, Casca, then you had the demon girl, like he fucked her just so he could like stab her when she transformed. And then what else? And because of his childhood with the I can't remember what his name is, Donovan. No, Donovan, the guy that raped him when he was a child. Like, I think he's completely turned off of any sort of intimate stuff with men. That's definitely for sure. But he's seen Griffith as a friend. That's how I take it.
Yeah, and what about from Griffith's point of view? Do you feel as though that there was romantic feelings in that regard?
I think it's a mixture of, like, because we've seen, you know, Griffith is, when it comes to selflessness, he was able to sleep with that king. So he's, you know, he's dove into homosexual stuff. Not that that's a bad thing, but it shows, like, I don't know, like, at the same, it could come down to like he was very controlling over Guts, and he seen Guts as an object that belonged to him in a sense. But there was, I don't know, it was kind of like he didn't like the fact that what he owned was leaving. That was more so the case with him, and the whole thing with Casca and the Eclipse was basically like a fuck you to Guts. That was essentially why he did it.
To counter something real quickly though, you said basically how he looked at him as like, his weapon, his property or whatever, but he looked at the Band of the Hawk in its entirety as that as well, but he never really did irrational things and threw himself out there for all the other members. It was mainly Guts that he did
that's
everything.
different. It's kind of like, you got your favorite toy, like you'll always have like I don't know, like I value my PS4 over like some random figure I've got or something like that, so there's
fair enough.
Well, if I were to interject, I would say that him calling Guts property was Griffith's way of rationalizing to himself how he feels about Guts. I don't think Griffith himself is really entirely sure how he feels about Guts, and that was just his way of trying to make sense of it.
There's a huge thing to like Griffith in general isn't mentally 100%. I don't think really a lot of the main cast is in the series. Like they have very weird personalities, and it's more so just because of their conditionings from their childhoods leading up. Like you seen, Griffith break down, and he was scratching himself so much that he was making himself bleed. So it's really hard to say like how he 100% feels about Guts. From my perspective, it's more so like he's just throwing a hissy fit because he's not getting what he wants, and that's why it was a mixture of, I don't want my friend Guts to leave, but I also don't want my object to leave at the same time. I
will say, to be fair, I'd probably be clawing myself too if I just got raped by some fat fuck. I'm just saying.
Rest in pepperoni.
I think a lot of people would feel similarly in that situation.
Now, I'm not sure how many people have actually seen the series Hannibal, the TV series that finished airing a couple years back, but I definitely think it will be a fair assessment to compare the relationship that Guts and Griffith have to Hannibal Lecter and Will Graham. And the thing is, I know that the people behind that series in particular, they confirmed that in a way, Hannibal did love Will, but in the series he kind of always masqueraded as it was more so friendship. Do you think that that could potentially be the same case here, where Griffith was masquerading it as a weapon, but he truly does, like, it's similar in a way, he does have these romantic feelings, and it's just that he's lying to himself?
I think if Guts laid down on a bed and spread his butt cheeks, Griffith would be fucking diving in there like a swimming pool.
Wow.
Well then, what do you think, Shintai?
Having seen Hannibal, I would say in Hannibal's case, Hannibal was very aware of the fact that he felt that way towards Will Graham, and everything he did was a very calculated move. I would say, comparatively speaking, with Griffith, I don't think Griffith was entirely sure of what exactly he felt towards Guts, which is why he acted so irrationally. Hannibal never acts irrationally. He's very calculated. He knows exactly what he's doing at all times. And Griffith, on the other hand, would do things that's not totally rational for the sake of Guts. So I do feel that with Griffith, Griffith has this idea in his head that, he feels a certain way about Guts, but that it's just because he thinks of Guts as this piece of property, but, in the dark recesses of his mind, he probably feels a way about him that he's not entirely sure what to make of.
Now, let's talk about the future of the series. Now, me and Shintai, we're not caught up. We pretty much were around the area of the Millennium Hawk arc. I know Clyde is currently caught up to the manga. One thing is, where could this all lead to? I think we all know that on Guts' side, he's out for blood. He wants Griffith dead, period. There's nothing more to it on that side. On Griffith's side, I'm not exactly sure where's his head regarding, his relationship with Guts. Do you think there's a possibility for any sort of positivity towards the end of all this? Do you think it could be on a battlefield, they're both at death's door and they have one final smile, one final joke? Do you think there's any room for that anymore? Or because of the eclipse and everything that transpired afterward as well, there's just no room for that? They'll never have even a decent civilized conversation, a smile, or anything. That's completely out the window.
Well, at the moment there's so many weird things that are happening with the manga. Like, for example, I won't spoil a lot of things, but there's a couple of theories that because they're on a certain island where time slows, it's like time warps really weird. So by the time that Guts gets to the Falconia, which is the name of the city that Griffith has now, he could be a different age and stuff. Like there's all these theories about that. They might meet up and then like Griffith is still young and stuff and all this. It's very confusing, but at the moment Guts spoke to the elf people and and he was saying like he was talking very confidently about the way that Griffith thinks and his basically his goals and ambitions and stuff, and he sort of speaks of him in a very positive way, like he's something to be feared, he's very strong. But you can also tell like with the Berserker armor, the way that Guts has been going downhill, he does have support from Farnese, the Witch Girl and all the other people in his squad, but I don't know, like at the moment it's Guts and a couple of people going into a kingdom to get Griffith. Like that's what it is. It's basically like a squad of like 5 dudes going into a kingdom against thousands of people at the moment. So from my perspective as a guy, there's nothing you could do to redeem the fact that you raped my girlfriend in front of me in hell and slaughtered all my friends. So logically I would say no. I don't think Guts will ever forgive him, but there could be some sort of I don't know, some sort of nice death where maybe they could kill each other at the same time, or Guts does kill Griffith and then, there's some sort of resolve there, but I don't see them ever being friends again, just because of my perspective as a guy.
What about you, Shintai? You think there's any room for redemption, any room for a rekindling of friendship, or that's completely out of the question at this point?
Absolutely not. I don't think that Griffith is even... I don't think he's even redeemable for the audience, let alone, Guts. Like I know it's a joke, but every time I see one of that stupid fucking meme of Griffith did nothing wrong, yeah. I get mad. Like I know it's a joke, but I still get mad. So and for Guts, it's a million times worse.
It's so ridiculous, right? They say he did nothing wrong because he was mentally fucked at the time, but it's like you don't say that about a school shooter. Like, oh, he did nothing wrong. Like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck?
I mean, I will at least say that there might be, at the very least, like, at the end, before they die, there might be a word or two of, kind of like coming to terms with what happened. And then moving past it, in a way, but in no way reconciliation. Absolutely not. I think that's completely out the door. There is no way they're going to be chummy again. They're not going to be like, oi, mate, let's have a fucking pint.
Let's have a couple shots, mate.
It's just go down the pub for a couple beers, mate. She'll be right. It'll blow over.
Personally, I want to say, looking at both characters, I want to say that Griffith almost always will be up for rekindling a friendship with Guts. I think he will always, regardless of what he says, regardless of what transpires, I think Griffith will always have a place for Guts because of the caring that he had for him. And again, that's why he was so spiteful. I mean, that's putting it politely, spiteful of what he did to Guts, with the whole eclipse or whatever. But I think ultimately he will always be willing to bury the hatchet. On Guts' side, I think the closest thing we'll get to positivity or rekindling of anything is literally on Griffith's deathbed. As Griffith is dying, I think he might get a smile, or after Griffith's death for that matter. I don't think there'll any time soon or any time in general within the series will Guts, forgive him or anything like that. It'll just be on his deathbed where he'll say, okay, I got my revenge. Here it is. We had some good times. And that's as far as it goes. But that's where I see it with both characters. Griffith, yeah, anytime. Guts, only if he's dying or dead.
There's 2 reasons why I think it will never happen where they'll ever get along, just from a logical standpoint. There's one at the moment. There is something to do with Casca, which we're going to find out, which could change Guts' perspective completely. And this is why I say you should catch up to date with the manga. But there's also if Guts continues to use the Berserker armor, and if he has that on when he's near fucking Griffith, he's going to go insane. Like, he won't stop until he's either killed Griffith or unless he's dead. Like, if they fight one-on-one and he's got the armor on, it's basically the end of Guts. Like, that's it. I mean, we could have, the fairy tale ending and stuff where they do have some sort of good moment, but, I just feel like, from my perspective, if I was Guts, I would never fucking forgive him for what he did. There's no way, no matter how much good times we had, when Griffith spoke to Guts, when he fought, when Zod stepped in the snow, which you guys have read, Griffith was way too calm. He didn't give a shit about what he'd done.
Yeah, well, he went down a dark path. I think we pretty much covered every part of this relationship. I just want to say, any final thoughts from you guys regarding this relationship and just the depth and complexities and what it truly means to literature in general, not only anime and manga, this relationship between Guts and Griffith. Shintai?
I just gotta say before that, I want the ending to be Griffith getting murdered super hard. Like, just the fucking most brutal death ever. And if Guts dies in the process, then I'm willing to accept that. But as long as Griffith gets his fucking comeuppance, yo,
Damn.
that'll be it. That'll be like 10 out of 10 best ending. Now, in regards to their relationship and how it should be viewed in regards to like the whole of like literature, I'm sure some people just wouldn't be able to accept it as like this great relationship because people have this completely misguided interpretation of anime and manga as if it's this lower form of art, but that is ridiculous. I think it should be considered one of the greats in literature because it doesn't matter if it has a certain art style or whatever. What matters is the writing. What matters is what is on the pages, and what is there is something incredible. There's so many ways that you can interpret this relationship. Some people think that Griffith is gay. Some people think that Griffith merely looks at Guts as a tool. Some people think that they're friends, or some people think that they were rivals. There's so many ways you can look at the relationship, and I can't see how someone would deny that level of thought and care that was put into this relationship, for any reason, because it would just be arbitrary to me. So I just feel that this is something that people, if you've listened to this and you haven't read Berserk, shame on you. But if you're listening to this and you haven't, please do yourself a favor and do so, and you will see, like us, this amazing relationship, and I'm sure you'll come to your own conclusions as to what the relationship actually means. And I think that's valuable. I think that kind of discussion is great, and I think that is what makes it special.
Yeah, honestly, like, when it comes to anime, if I was to suggest any story to someone who, whether it's an adult or to someone who isn't really into anime, like, if I was to suggest them Berserk, it's just one of those shows where it doesn't have a lot of the childish, stereotypical elements. It's a very serious story. It's incredibly well written. If you know anything about Miura, there's a lot of things in the manga where he wrote during a lot of deep depression, so you can feel how dark the story gets. And the whole relationship in general is one of the most well-written, just psychological things in anime. Like, it's so not only philosophical, but there are so many realistic aspects with Guts' personality and Griffith that it's, honestly, it's not overrated. It's, it's number one on my anime list in the manga for a reason, because it's really that good. So it might not be your cup of tea if you've never seen it before, but as someone who's into medieval stuff and just really good stories in general, this is basically one of the pinnacle parts of what you could consider a good anime story, in my opinion.
Very well put. I'd like to thank everybody that made it this far for listening in on our Berserk discussion. I'd like to thank you guys both for joining me in on this. I had a great time. I think this was an awesome discussion. And yeah, I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day.